Well, today I'm going to go over some of the things you need to know before you take a long trip, or probably should even do this before you take a short trip, but in this case I'm taking a very long trip. Going to travel probably more than 1,000 miles one way, and I just want to make sure that I've got everything done, and this is the minimum stuff to do on this camper before you head out. So there's probably a few other things that I won't have in this video that you need to do as well, but these are some of the basics. On these campers, you want to look your tires over real well and make sure that there's no bulges, or not so much the tread wear on these, but as tires get old, they will pop, and so you want to make sure that there's nothing that looks obvious just by basically looking on the inside, outside, anything along the edges. And then you also want to get your air pressures right, and this could be different. I have different tires in here, so it has a max of 65 psi on these tires, but if you look over here at the data sheet, and like I say, I don't know if this is the manufacturer that normally carries these, but on this side it's saying go to 40 psi is what they want these at. So that's what I'm going to, and I'm using a tire inflator that Ryobi makes, and several different companies make these tire inflators. What you do is you set your psi on here, you hook it up, you turn it on, and it goes up to that psi and stops. I really recommend having this type of a setup. Like I said, there's different brands. I will put the this particular unit on the video description if anybody wants to purchase this particular type setup. So I've already checked out these tires here, and I've got them down to right at 40 psi. So the next thing is, if you have a spare, which first off you should have a spare. Some of these campers, it was an extra on these campers, so I have a spare underneath there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up underneath there, and I found that to take that loose it requires this wrench right here, and I would say it's best to have one of these. It's a 9/16 wrench. I would say the best to use a boxed end, and it has this offset, that way it gets up in there, and you can take those two screws that hold that up against the actual frame, take that loose. So we're going to go in there now and check that out, and we're going to pull that down and take a look at, make sure the air pressure is good on that. Now when you get under here, I'm not sure how yours is set up, but mine is set up where the actual air chuck, I think it's because of the bolts aren't long enough to flip it over to where the air chuck will be on the outside. If you can do that, you want the air chuck to come out on this side, that way you can check those air pressures without taking this tire down. But in my case, the air chuck's on the other side, and maybe yours is that way, but I would recommend, if that's the case, you make sure that you get this down and check your air pressure. So that's what I'm going to do now, and I'll show you here again. On this particular setup, what you want to do is, even if you've already checked this and you're putting this in place, you want to take your wrench, boxed in wrench here, and you want to loosen these a little bit to make sure that these threads aren't stuck. Basically, you want to make sure the bolts, you want to basically let it down a little bit, check to make sure you can get them loose and the threads are good and clear, and then torque them back up before you take a trip. And like I say, you just want to make them good and snug where this wheel doesn't bounce around. So that's very important. And so right now I'm going to take this down to check the air pressure. So once you kind of get that loose, you can see here, got it down far enough here that I can use my impact wrench, and bringing it down here, so I can use this to bring it the rest of the way down. Makes it a little easier. And I'd recommend, if you can take this with you on your trip, take it with you on your trip for sure. That's what I think I'm going to do. Oh, I've got that tire down there, and like I say, you want to look it over real good, and you can see here with my meter it's only 27.5 psi, so it's a good thing I did take it down to air it up. We're going to set this thing now on, we're going to go ahead and set it on 40 and turn it on, and it will go up to that amount, and it'll shut off when it hits 40. Okay, it's up to 40. Well, I now know why people take these things off the bottom and put them out front. And maybe I'll work that in the future. And I've actually seen some hook into this and have a sway arm that sways out of the way. And man, I have been fighting to get this tire up underneath here. I have used a scissors jack over here. Finally, I used a jack pad here with a piece of wood, slid the tire up, and then basically just body pressed it up against there. Finally got one nut on, so now I'm getting the other one on, but it's a son of a gun to get that tire back on there. And probably I'll be changing that in the future and putting it up on the front of the tongue, because it's a son of a gun underneath there. I can't imagine doing this on the side of the road. Of course, getting the tire down and replacing it on the actual vehicle is not that difficult. It's getting the thing back up on there is the pain. So if that was to happen on the road, I would just take the tire and throw it in the back of the truck and do something with it later. So just letting you know, that's a son of a gun back down. But anyway, I just wanted to show you that I now have the air chuck on this side. That way in the future I can check my tire out. I mean, I only have to come in here and check that air through here. I don't have to drop this entire thing. So that's good for me now. Like I say, you want to check that, make sure those threads come off really well. So I'm going to recommend that if you put this on and you use that impact wrench, don't put it all the way down. You want to put the last bit with hand tightening. That way you know you can get it down. Like I say, I'm going to use this 9/16 wrench here and just hand tighten it to where it's tight up against the frame. So you want to hit it, make sure it ain't wobbly, it's good and tight. Make sure this is good and tight here. This one here seems like it's not quite there yet. Do a little bit on each side. You kind of get an even pressure. Before you go, like say, if you're going on a camping trip, and you've already done all this stuff, you've already checked your air pressure, and you just want to get in here and make sure that these can be broke loose. Go make sure they turn. If they don't turn, then you got to kind of take that loose and re-lube it up. You want it good and snug, but you want it to where you can do it by hand when you're under the car, when you're working on the side of the road. So going on to the other things, you want to make sure you have a four-way setup like this. You want to do a four-way to do your lugs, and at the very least have one that you know that actually works for your particular lugs. Again, you want to have this 9/16 wrench here. I would recommend some kind of impact drill and an air pump. Now in my car I have a scissors jack very similar to this one right here that I'm going to use if I had to. I just use that scissors jack. If you don't have one, then you need either a bottle jack or you need some kind of jack for your actual camper. But I want to use the one out of my car if it comes to that. And even if you had a jack stand like that, it might help out. So that's about all I have for this video. I just wanted to show you some of the things you check. That's just a simple few things you check before you head out. And of course, you want to check your torque on your lugs to make sure none of them are loose as well. But that's about it I have on this quick video of when you're heading out and just checking a few things before you hit the road.